All right. Your first deal, right? You had to refi out of it. What were some other things you learned along the way when you started acquiring properties through creative?
I learned a couple of things that people need to understand. There's two trains of thought. There's subject to and seller finance, and people don't quite understand the two difference between them. Even me, I didn't quite understand. It seems silly, but I didn't understand the difference between subject to and seller finance.
I mean, I think we've all been there, right? I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of.
In fact, I've had to make 6 or 7 videos on it on my YouTube channel because it commonly comes up all the time.
I mean, I think, team, if you guys are paying attention, hell, let's us make a video about that. All right,
yeah,
continue.
You should. So the difference, if I understood the difference between subject to and seller finance, I would also then know the difference between the two sellers of subject to and seller finance, because they're not the same type of demographic.
No.
Right? In subject to, it means I'm taking over somebody else's debt. So think about it as like, I want to buy your car. I can just take over your car payments. That's called subject to. But what if your car is paid off and you don't have payments? Well, I just say, let me make payments to you and you just be my bank. That's seller finance. So seller finance means the property is paid off free and clear. Subject to means there's a debt that I need to make payments to and take that over. It's pretty simple. I didn't know that. Okay, so I would rack my brains like, oh my gosh, and I would think and confuse the buyers in seller finance and subject to as the same demographic. That you talk to them polar opposite. A subject to seller typically is going through pain. A seller finance seller only wants gain.
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to get a lot of sellers. If you're a wholesaler, you're a real estate agent, bought a lot of deals from wholesalers, bought a lot of deals from agents where I have to come in and restructure it where they say, my seller's out of control. They want too much money for this property. I'm like, that kind of reminds me of my F-150. I looked at the price of what Zillow tells me or Kelley Blue Book, and I'm like, F that. I think it's worth more than that. I'm a belligerent seller just like anybody else. So I go, well, the value of something is not the purchase price. The value of something is what I can do with it and how cheaply I can get into it, right? And so seller finance, typically all the seller wants is to see that they sold the property for a they committed in their minds when they bought the property and when they're selling it. The seller in a seller finance situation is financially savvy, okay? Most seller finance sellers actually know what a no is, a promissory no. They know what seller finance is. A lot of sellers know what subject to is too. Okay. These sellers want to win. They want a high purchase price. Okay. That's a seller finance. I wish I knew that or way earlier. It took me about a year, maybe 2 years to truly understand the difference between these two sellers.
Yep.
So when you have a seller that says, I want $300,000 for a $300,000 house, I go, no problem. If I was able to come up to $300,000, would you give me terms? Seller says, what's terms? I then tell them my F-150 story. They go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I go, so you can see how I can pay you $300,000 as long as it makes sense for me. On subject to, it's always pain. It's always, I owe too much money. And some people right now will go, well, everybody has equity. I go, not the people that did a refinance last year.
Yeah. If it's the last 6 months, you don't have equity. But more than 6 months.
Depending on the market. Some markets, think about this too, and this is another thing I wish I truly understood when I was getting into real estate, is what does it cost my buyer to sell their fix and flip? Most people have no clue. They're out there wholesaling deals to their fix and flip buyers, and their fix and flip buyer has to renovate the property, sell it on the MLS, and pay roughly 8 to 10% in selling costs. A lot of sellers don't have 8 to 10% of equity a year after they bought their house. So they go sell their property. It's like, I know I'm a little bit over the place, but let me explain this. If I have a house that is ARV, or my Zillow price says, if I go to Zillow right now and Zillow says it's worth 300 and I owe 270, how much equity do I have? Put a comment in the side chat. How much equity does that seller have? $300,000 is what their house is worth. They owe $270,000. People are like, this is obviously a trick.
Right.
It is a trick because you think that $30,000 is equity. That is not equity. That is called spread. That is not equity. Write this down. Equity is what you have in your pocket after you sell your house and everything is paid off. That's equity. So somebody who owes $270, the house is worth $300, will actually walk out of that transaction with $0. So if you bought a property and it actually went up 10% in a year,
Mm-hmm.
you still don't have equity.
Yeah, you're breaking even.
You're breaking even.
Yeah.
And so you get a lot of sellers like, wow, really? This is it? So we're gobbling up subject to deals from people that are in foreclosure. A lot of foreclosures are happening right now. A lot of people they refinanced last year and they don't have any equity. A lot of those deals are popping up right now.